I was standing in the bakery aisle with a store-bought apple pie in one hand and my grandmother's buttermilk pie in the other when I called my mother to ask which one to bring for Christmas. She went quiet. Then she said, "Oh, honey, we did Christmas yesterday." I laughed. I thought she was joking. My father took the phone and said, "It was easier without you there." 40 minutes later, I gave my grandmother's pie to a family shelter on Dorr Street. 3 hours after that, my mother called screaming about a house she had watched me buy back with 11 years of savings. Stay with me. What I found 4 days later was worse than the phone call. If stories like this stay with you, subscribe so you don't miss what came next. That morning came with none of the warning signs people invent afterward. I woke before 7 in my Toledo apartment and ran the same list I always ran on holidays. Wrap the last 2 gifts, pick up dessert. Remember the coffee my mother likes. Outside, the sky was the flat winter gray Ohio specializes in. The buttermilk pie was already cooling on my counter. My grandmother, Vivian Krause, taught me that recipe in a kitchen at 1412 Kelsey Street, where I spent every afternoon from 6 to 14. She made me ruin it 4 times before she let me get it right. She died 11 years ago. My father was executor. He sold her house in 9 weeks to a cash buyer, roughly $84,000 under what a patient sale would have brought. He said the estate needed the money. I was 28 and had no standing to argue, so I didn't. I have never accused my father of stealing from his mother. I want that understood. He was in a hurry, and being in a hurry is not a crime. It just costs other people things they don't get back. So I started saving, bonuses untouched, profit sharing untouched. 11 years of living below what I earned as an operations director at a freight brokerage. When the company was acquired, my ESOP payout landed. In 2019, I had set an alert on the address and forgotten about it. It went off in September. I bought it back in October for $268,000 cash. The title went into my name alone. I was going to give it to my parents. Not because they were homeless, because their equity was gone. My father had refinanced twice, and a home equity line had funded a business he no longer mentions. Their roof needed $41,000 of work before that house would sell at market. But mostly, I wanted to hand the family back the thing it had lost. I took them through twice. My mother stood at the bay window with a tape measure, talking about curtains. My father claimed the back bedroom for a reading chair and laughed that he was finally old enough to admit he needed one. On the second walkthrough, he asked when his name would go on the deed. I told him January 8th, after my attorney finished the gift tax paperwork. The annual exclusion is $19,000 per person. So signing in January, let us use 2 years of exclusions for both of them before reporting the rest on a Form 709. My mother asked who carried the insurance until then. I said I did. They asked. I answered. They both knew exactly whose name was on that house. In the pantry door frame, the pencil marks were still there. D 1993, D 1996. My grandmother measured me there every spring and never painted over it. She had one other rule. She set an extra place at every meal. For whoever turned up, 51 years, 1 empty plate, no explanation. I inherited the habit without deciding to. I am the one who counts chairs. I always add one. 2 weeks before Christmas, we ate dinner at my parents' house. And my father made a joke at my sister Camille's expense, the kind everyone laughed at fast enough that he never had to examine it. Camille moved a piece of broccoli back and forth with her fork. I didn't make a scene. I just told him it wasn't funny. The room went still for about 3 seconds. Later, my mother told me he thought I had changed the mood. It stayed with me for a day, then disappeared under work deadlines. I never imagined it had become evidence. The fluorescent tube above the bakery aisle hummed slightly off-pitch. Behind me, a boy was working through a long negotiation about frosted cookies. A cart went past with wrapping paper sticking out of it like a mast. I had a pie in each hand and my phone wedged against my shoulder. The apple was store-bought, my father's favorite. Vivian's buttermilk had ridden over on the passenger seat, and I had carried it in rather than leave it in a lot full of people backing out blind. There were already going to be too many sweets. I wanted somebody else to choose for once. My mother picked up. I asked the question. Then the silence went on long enough that I pulled the phone away from my ear to make sure the call had not dropped. When she spoke, she used the voice she saves for making unpleasant information sound harmless, careful, soft at the edges. "Oh, honey, we did Christmas yesterday." For a second, my brain treated the sentence like nonsense. I actually smiled. I thought maybe they had opened a gift or two early because Camille had stopped by after her shift. I asked her what she meant. She explained that everyone had already been together the night before, so they had gone ahead and done dinner and presents. Then, she said it the way you describe weather, as though Christmas had happened spontaneously somewhere I was not, and nobody had noticed until the dishes were done. The pie boxes had begun to cut into the sides of my thumbs. I asked the only question that mattered. "You planned it without me?" There was movement on the other end, a chair, a door. Then my father's voice replaced hers, and he did not bother softening anything. "It was easier without you there." I kept going in the tone he used for decisions he had already made. Lately, I questioned everything. I corrected people. I made gatherings tense. They had wanted one peaceful Christmas. He said it as though the decision had been practical, considerate, even. The key to 1412. Kelsey was in my coat pocket while he said it. I could feel the edge of it against my hip. I did not defend myself. I did not list the holidays I had organized or the years I had arrived first and left last. I did not mention the house. That surprised me afterward, because normally I would have started solving a misunderstanding before the other person had finished creating it. Instead, I stood there and listened until there was nothing left to misunderstand. When the call ended, I stayed where I was long enough for another shopper to reach around me for a package of dinner rolls. I put the apple pie back on the shelf, squared with the others. My hands were steady, which made it stranger. Then I finished the shopping, because my body had decided that completing the trip was easier than deciding what came next. I bought the coffee. At the register, the cashier told me to have a Merry Christmas, and I thanked her automatically. In the parking lot, I loaded the bags, set the pie on the passenger seat, and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. My parents' gifts were in the trunk. My mother's coffee was in one of the bags. The appointment card for January 8th was in my wallet, tucked behind my insurance card so I would not lose it. For 19 years, I had known what to do on Christmas morning, because there had always been somewhere I was expected to arrive. Now there was a pie nobody was waiting for. I started driving without choosing a direction. Storefronts dark. The light was already going thin and blue, the way it does here by early afternoon in December. I drove past the hardware store where my father worked for 22 years, past a gas station with one car at the pumps. About 15 minutes in, I passed a community center on Dorr Street that my company had supplied during a winter drive 2 years earlier. Coats, socks, cases of formula. A banner on the fence advertised a Christmas meal for families in temporary housing. I knew there was a family shelter attached to it. I had never been inside. I almost kept driving. Then I looked at the pie on the seat beside me. My grandmother taught me to make it less than a mile from where I was parked, in a house I now owned outright, and I had just been told there was no table left to carry it to. I turned around. Inside, the room smelled like coffee and roasted meat and industrial cleaner. Folding tables had been pushed into 2 long rows. Paper chains made by children ran along one wall, taped unevenly, some links already curling loose. A volunteer checked the seal on the box before she accepted it, which I understood. That was when I noticed the girl. She was standing a few feet away beside a woman holding a bag of donated clothes. 8, maybe, dark hair pulled back, sleeves slightly too long for her arms. She was not looking at me. She was looking at the pie. Her face changed in a way nobody at my parents' table would have noticed. Not greed, not even excitement. At first, just surprise. As though an ordinary pie had arrived from somewhere improbable. Is the whole thing really for us? There was nothing dramatic in how she asked it. That was what hurt. She sounded like a child checking the rules before she let herself be excited. I told her it was. She smiled for about a second, then looked at her mother, as though happiness required permission. The woman introduced herself as Perla Duarte, and reminded the girl, Ines, to let the volunteers finish setting up. She thanked me for the pie without the exaggerated gratitude people sometimes use when they think a donor expects to be praised. She looked tired rather than defeated. Neat blouse under an inexpensive coat, one hand still gripping the handles of the clothing bag. I had meant to leave immediately. Instead, I stayed while a staff member found a place for my other bags, and Perla and I started talking because we happened to be standing in the same 3 feet of floor. She told me the pieces herself. She had done billing for a dental group for 6 years until the practice closed in September. That had been manageable at first. She had savings and unemployment, and she expected to be working again within weeks. Then the owner of her apartment building sold the property. She needed a new deposit, first month's rent, moving costs, and proof of current income at almost exactly the moment she stopped having any. She did not say any of it like a confession. She said it the way I might describe a failed audit at work. This happened, then this happened, and now I am solving the next problem. That difference mattered more than I could explain. My family had spent 20 years accepting my help as though it naturally belonged to them. Perla was uncomfortable discussing assistance she actually needed. Inez had drifted closer while we talked. She was working a link of the paper chain loose from the wall where the tape had given up. Perla told her to leave it for the staff. Inez pressed it back with both palms and said, almost absently, "Mom says we just need one good winter. One good winter." I had spent that morning holding a gift worth more than $250,000 for people who had already decided they could do Christmas without me. I did not offer her anything large. I am glad about that now, I said. I've worked with a couple of housing programs through my company. I don't know if any of them fit you. I could ask. Do you want me to ask? Perla did not thank me. She asked whether the programs were legitimate, and whether taking information from me would affect the support she was already getting. I did not know. So I said I would find out instead of pretending. On my way out, I asked a staff member a question about Perla, not an intrusive one. I thought I was being helpful. The woman put down her clipboard and told me, kindly and completely, that she could not discuss anyone here. She could not confirm who was staying, or whether anyone was staying at all. She said I was welcome to leave my number, and that whether it ever got used was Perla's decision and nobody else's. It was the first time all day that someone had told me no and meant it kindly. I wrote my number on the back of a donation receipt and left. In the car, I remembered something my grandmother told me once and never repeated. The winter of 1974, a family 2 doors down lost their furnace and their savings in the same month. Vivian put them in the upstairs bedroom at 1412. Kelsey until March, 4 people, 1 bathroom, no discussion. She never called it charity. She called it the extra place, but bigger. It was Christmas Day, so the law office was closed. There was no version of events in which Harriet Nagel left her own dinner to handle a real estate decision for me. I sent an email to the file instead. 4 sentences: do not execute, notarize, or record the deed on January 8th. The gift is withdrawn. Please confirm receipt when the office reopens. Then, I left a voicemail saying the same thing, so there would be no argument later about when I decided. There was no closing to stop. A gift of real property does not have one. The deed was sitting in a folder in Harriet's office, unsigned, unnotarized, and unrecorded with the Lucas County recorder. Legally, it was not a house. It was a piece of paper with my name on it in 2 places. Then I called my mother. I kept it short, which is not something I had ever managed with her. I told her I was not transferring 1412. Kelsey, and that she and Dad should not make any further plans around owning it. I also told her, because I did not want to be accused later of hiding it, that I had come from a family shelter that afternoon and was thinking about whether the house might be used through an established transitional housing program. I had promised it to nobody. I had decided nothing. She was too stunned to argue. That was new as well. I ended the call before the cycle could start. I know the shape of it by heart. Explanation, then guilt, then compromise, then me fixing everything so nobody has to stay uncomfortable for longer than a few minutes. I hung up while she was still gathering herself, then sat on the edge of my couch and felt like I had done something violent. For the next 2 hours, I tried to do nothing, and I was bad at it. I put away groceries for a dinner I was not attending. I moved my parents' wrapped gifts into the hall closet because looking at them made my stomach tighten. I made coffee and forgot to drink it. My phone lit up several times and I did not answer. I could imagine the calls moving through the family without hearing them. My mother telling my father calling Camille, somebody deciding I was emotional. They had known me long enough to predict the ending they wanted. Almost exactly 3 hours after Ines asked whether the whole pie was really for them. My mother's name filled my screen again. This time I answered. She was already loud enough that I moved the phone from my ear. Somewhere between our 2 calls, she had taken the word program and turned it into a certainty that I was handing the family's house to strangers off the street. She wanted to know how I could pull it away after they had built their retirement around it. Then she said the sentence that ended the argument. "You can't give our house to strangers." My purse was on the counter where I had dropped it. The appointment card for January 8th was still inside it. Our house. The silence after it was immediate, and it was hers, not mine. She tried to correct it. She said she meant the house I had promised them. But you cannot unsay the first version. The first version is the one that was in there. It was never your house, Mom. Dad asked in October, and I gave you both the date. I did not raise my voice. That seemed to make it worse. She went back to Christmas, insisting I was turning one dinner into a punishment for the entire family. And while she was explaining why everyone had wanted a quieter evening, she let something else out. They had decided the weekend before, not the afternoon of the 24th. Not because everyone happened to be together. The weekend before Christmas, with days to pick up a phone. "We thought you'd get over it," she said. That landed differently from what my father said in the grocery store. He had told me I was unwanted. She had just told me they knew I would be hurt, and had built my forgiveness into the plan like a load-bearing wall. If you have ever been told you would get over it by someone who was counting on it, put, "We thought you'd get over it," in the comments. I want to see how many of us there are, and subscribe, because the part that actually broke me came 4 days later, and nobody had to say a word. Monday arrived with the kind of ordinary efficiency I used to depend on. At 9:17, Harriet emailed, "The deed had never been executed. My instruction was on file, nothing had been recorded, nothing was pending, and there was nothing for anyone to undo." She added that she was covering a skeleton week and her partner would be back on January 2nd. One paragraph settled what my family had spent 3 days treating as a catastrophe. I read it twice, filed it, and closed the laptop. The legal part was simple. It turned out to be the only simple part. My Aunt Adele called that afternoon. She is my father's older sister, 72, widowed, and she has never once asked me for anything. Her voice had the awkwardness of somebody who has realized she participated in something without understanding what it was. Adele had believed I was busy, not vaguely busy. My mother had told the family that I had made other plans for Christmas and would not be joining them. Adele said she had asked about me when the date moved, because she knew I always helped my mother organize everything. My mother waved it off. I was doing my own thing that year, and everyone should take advantage of being free on Christmas Eve. The gathering had not formed by accident. The absence had been explained before anyone had a reason to question it. Adele apologized more than once. I could hear how embarrassed she was. I did not need her guilt. I needed the sequence. Camille came to my apartment Tuesday evening. I knew she was nervous before she sat down, because she kept smoothing the sleeves of her coat after she had already taken it off. I made coffee and let her talk without interrupting. She had been told the same story as everyone else, but she admitted she had noticed I was missing almost immediately. She watched our mother check the oven 4 times, hunt through 2 drawers for serving spoons, and ask twice whether anyone had brought extra ice. All things I handle, all things nobody has ever had to think about. Then I asked her the question I had been carrying since Adele hung up. If all of you really thought I had other plans, why didn't one person text me Merry Christmas? Her eyes dropped. There is no version of that answer that comes out innocent. They exchanged gifts. They ate. They took pictures. "Send me one," I said. She hesitated long enough that I already knew something, though not yet what. I did not look at the faces. I did not look at the food. I counted the chairs. 7 people, 7 chairs, 7 place settings, with a folded napkin at every one. Nobody had dragged a chair in from the spare room. Nobody had set a plate and then quietly taken it away. There was no extra chair anywhere in that frame, and there was no gap where one had been. And they were sitting at my grandmother's table. My parents took it out of 1412. Kelsey the week the house sold, because it was too big for the buyers and nobody wanted to pay to move it. Vivian Krause set one extra place at that table for 51 years, for whoever turned up, and never explained why to anyone. My family sat down at it on Christmas Eve and counted exactly 7. Camille was watching my face. Then she said the rest of it, and she did not make me pull it out of her. Our father had raised his glass partway through dinner. Not a long speech. He was not a long speech man. And next Christmas, we'll all be at the old place. People lifted their glasses. Somebody congratulated our mother again. And Camille told me the part she had come there to say, which was that she had lifted hers too. "I remembered it the second you asked me on the phone," she said. "I didn't tell you because I raised mine." I sat with the phone in my hand for a while after she left. Until that evening, I had believed the worst thing my family had done was enjoy Christmas without me. That was survivable. People get tired of each other. People make bad calls. This was different. They had toasted the house while I was still buying dessert for a dinner I thought I was invited to. They had celebrated the thing I gave them without needing the person who gave it. At the table of the woman who taught me to always set one more. Wednesday morning, I drove to 1412. Kelsey and sat in the driveway with the engine running. Frost edged the lawn. The rooms inside were technically empty and completely crowded with somebody else's plans. I had not noticed the language changing. That was the part I kept returning to. On the first walkthrough, my mother called it the house you're giving us. By the second, it had become our retirement place. On the last visit, standing in the front room with her coat still buttoned, she asked where our tree would go next year. Possession had replaced gratitude so gradually that I had mistaken it for excitement. My father called while I was still in the car. He wanted to meet. He said the phone had made everything worse and that we needed to talk face to face, like adults. I almost laughed at the phrase. For 4 days, everyone had treated my decision as weather that would clear if they could get me into the right room and talk long enough. I told him where I was. Hai came in 20 minutes later and did something before he said a word. He scanned the living room, not the way you look at a house you have visited twice. He was checking whether anything had been moved. His eyes settled for a second on the bare corner by the window where the reading chair was going. Then he took off his gloves and put them in his coat pocket. That small movement told me more than his face did. He still felt at home here. Hein put his gloves in his pocket. I put my hand in mine and found the key still there. He began by telling me I was using money to control the family. Gifts are not supposed to come with conditions attached, he said. Taking the house back because my feelings were hurt made the original gesture look transactional, as though I had been buying something all along. I let him finish. A year earlier, I would have started assembling proof before he reached the end of the sentence. There was never a condition, I told him. I never asked to be thanked in front of anyone. I never asked to be consulted about the furniture. I never asked for a permanent seat at anything because I was paying for it. I assumed my parents wanted me at Christmas. That is not a condition. That is the floor. His jaw tightened. Then he said, "Christmas and the house are separate issues." That sentence clarified more than another hour of arguing could have. In his mind, my presence could be removed from the table on a Tuesday, and the gift would remain exactly where it was, untouched, still arriving in January. 2 accounts, no transfer between them. He talked about what parents do across a lifetime. He did not produce a list, and I did not ask for one. Then he said the ugliest thing he said all day, and he said it mildly. This is what a daughter in your position should want to do. I had wanted to. That is what made the sentence so ugly. Somewhere between my wanting to give and his expecting to receive. The gift had been converted into a duty, and gratitude had disappeared because in his mind, I was only doing my job. I turned toward the window, then I asked him the question, "Did you talk about the house on Christmas Eve?" He looked at the kitchen doorway. He started talking about retirement instead, how long my mother had been planning, what they would keep, how much easier one floor would be. He never answered. I let the silence sit there long enough for him to understand that I had noticed. Then I picked up my keys. I had coffee with my Aunt Adele that evening and told her what he had said. She set her cup down harder than she meant to. "Your father has been saying that sentence since he was 30. He said it about our mother's car. He said it about my husband's funeral." She looked at me. Nobody asks to be born, honey. When your father decided to have children, he took a job. He did not open a line of credit. Raising you was a choice he made. It is not an invoice he gets to hand you at 68. Adele is 72. She lives on Social Security in 2 rooms above a laundromat and has never asked me for $1. The only person in my family who actually needed help was the only one who never treated me like an account. The envelope came on a Thursday in the middle of January, certified, and I signed for it in the lobby of my building while the mail carrier waited. My parents had retained a lawyer. The letter was 2 pages. It demanded that I complete the transfer of 1412 Kelsey Street, and it laid out why I was obligated to. They had listed their current house with an agent in early January. They had paid a deposit on a storage unit on Central Avenue. They had canceled the maintenance contract on their furnace because they did not expect to need it past spring. All of it, the letter said, had been done in reliance on my promise. I read it standing up. Then I sat down on the arm of my couch and read it again. For 2 days, I was genuinely afraid. And I want to be honest about the shape of the fear, because it was not the shape I expected. I did arithmetic. I worked out what it would cost to settle, what it would cost to fight, and how many months of either I could absorb. I lost 2 nights of sleep. On the second night, I caught myself drafting an apology at 1 a.m. An email that began by saying I understood how difficult this had been for them. I did not send it. I did not delete it for 6 days. For 4 days, I had been the person who took something back. The letter made me a defendant, and I discovered how much of my certainty had been borrowed from being liked. They had paid a retainer to demand a key I had been carrying in my coat pocket since Christmas morning. Harriet Nagel called me back on Monday, and she was not worried, which annoyed me before it reassured me. She said there were 2 answers, and the first one would probably be enough. The first was Ohio's Statute of Frauds, Revised Code Section 1335.05. No action may be brought to charge a person upon a contract or sale of lands, tenements, or any interest in or concerning them, unless the agreement, or some memorandum of it, is in writing and signed by the party to be charged. A promise about real estate made out loud in a kitchen is not enforceable in Ohio. It never has been. I said that their lawyer must know that. Harriet said their lawyer certainly knew it, and had written the letter anyway, because most people settle before they ever learn the rule. The second answer was the one that closed the door. Their argument had a name: detrimental reliance, promissory estoppel. And in 2009, the Ohio Supreme Court held that a party may not use promissory estoppel to stop the other side from asserting the statute of frauds as a defense, and that damages under promissory estoppel are an adequate remedy for the breach of an oral promise where no signed agreement exists. There was no signed agreement anywhere. There was a folder in Harriet's office and a date in January that had come and gone. The reply she sent was 4 sentences long. It cited the statute, cited the case, noted that no deed had been executed or recorded, and declined. It cost me $600. Their attorney never wrote back. I told Harriet I was relieved. She let a beat go by. "You should be," she said, "but I've done this 19 years, and nobody has ever hired me to defend them from their parents and felt better afterward." I took the letter to Adele's that evening because I did not want to be alone with it. She read both pages without saying anything, put them face down on the table, and folded her hands. "I'm going to say the part nobody else will," she said. "You trained them. Every holiday you rescued, every joke you smoothed over, every bill you paid before anyone had to ask. You were teaching them there was no cost. 20 years of lessons, and your father learned exactly what you taught him. She let that sit. That does not make what they did right. It makes it predictable. And you are the only person in this family who can stop teaching it. I did not defend myself. I sat there and turned it over and found nothing in it I could honestly argue with. So I told her she was right. I had called it forgiveness. He had learned to read it as permission. Adele was the first person in 40 years to say out loud that I had written the curriculum. It took 8 months, and I made it take 8 months. February through August, I read program materials the way I read vendor contracts at work, comparing placement models and waiting for my anger to cool far enough to test whether the idea survived without it. Christmas had forced one immediate decision. Everything after it deserved to take longer than my temper did. Lucas County Family Bridge operated single-family transitional homes. Placements ran 9 to 12 months, case management, employment or an active search, a savings plan reviewed monthly, not rescue, time, structure, and an address that stayed the same. I would keep title. The nonprofit would operate the house under a long-term use agreement. Then the ordinary frictions started, and I was glad of it. A habitability inspection turned up a loose stair rail and a water heater past its useful life. Because 1412. Kelsey was built in 1921. There was lead paint disclosure to complete, which meant a contractor in the back bedroom in April scraping a sample from a window casing my grandmother had painted twice. My insurance carrier declined to renew the policy once they learned an organization would be operating the property. I rewrote it with a different carrier at 44% more. I pay full property tax on that house and receive no charitable deduction. Because the IRS does not allow a deduction for the rent-free use of property. It cost me money every month to give something away. I want that in the record. Because for a while my father told people I had done it to look generous. Hung said it to me too, in June. You're paying extra every month just to prove a point. I did not argue with him. That was new. I saw Perla in July at a coffee place near her work, and she told me something I had not asked about. Her sister in Cincinnati had offered to take Inez, only Inez. She said it like she was being generous, Perla said. And she was, in her way. Inez would have had a bedroom by New Year's. She turned her cup a quarter turn on the table. I said no, then I explained why, and she stopped returning my calls. She looked up. People think the hard part is not having a house. The hard part is that somebody always offers you a version of help that costs you the thing you were trying to protect. I had been telling myself for 8 months that I was the one who had learned something. Perla had made the same decision I made, in December, with less than I had, and she had lost a sister for it. So I asked Dana Whitlock whether I could request a specific family. Dana did not look surprised. She had clearly answered this before. She said no. Then she said the part I did not expect. Every donor asks, and every donor has a good reason. The rule isn't here to protect us from bad donors. It's here so the family never has to spend 9 months feeling like they owe somebody. I thought about a key in my coat pocket and a toast I had not been present for. Then I signed the form giving up the right to choose. I asked for one thing, and it was not a person. I asked that the house be listed in their records as the Vivian House, and I told Dana why. The winter of 1974, a family 2 doors down who lost a furnace and a savings account in the same month, and an upstairs bedroom until March. My grandmother never called it charity. She called it the extra place, but bigger. Dana wrote it down. It was the only condition I ever attached to anything, and it cost nobody anything. In September, she walked me through how placements are prioritized, consistent with McKinney-Vento School of Origin protections. Families with children already enrolled in the attendance zone are weighted first, because moving a child again undoes everything else. 1412. Kelsey sits inside the zone for Inez's elementary school. I had bought that house back because my grandmother taught me to make pie in its kitchen. I did not know I was also buying it 4 blocks from the school of a child I had not met yet. Perla called in October. Screened, selected, first family in. She had given her caseworker permission to tell me I had never seen her application, never knew who else applied, never touched the decision. She heard how long I stayed quiet. I need you to know I'm not asking you to carry us. I know, I told her. My mother asked to meet at a coffee shop, not the house, where I would have cleared cups out of habit. She said she missed me, not the house, not the organizing. Her daughter. Then I asked whose idea it had been. She looked out the window a while. My father had proposed it, and she agreed. The story about my other plans was hers. He had not told her to say it. She said it because it was easier than admitting they had chosen not to invite me. Peace that requires one person to disappear isn't peace, Mom. For once, she did not argue with the wording. My father waited months. After an anniversary dinner, he asked me to stay. He said he was willing to let the house issue go. Willing. That is, to forgive me. I asked him what exactly he was apologizing for. He regretted the consequences, the distance, the house, my mother's unhappiness. He never named the choice. So I asked again. I was tired of feeling challenged. He wanted one evening where nobody had to think before speaking. You knew I'd be hurt. I thought it would pass. Why were you so sure? He looked at me then, and there was no anger in it, only certainty built out of 20 years of evidence. Because you always come back. Camille told me the rest in March, the way you report weather. The roof was done in the fall, out of the retirement account. My father is back 2 days a week at the hardware store and calls it boredom. My mother no longer talks about one-story living. I did not feel anything I could put a name to. I keep waiting to. There is one thing I have not been able to undo. I have not asked anyone what to bring since that morning. Not once. When someone invites me now, I buy both and carry them in from the car in 2 trips. Nobody has ever said anything about it. It costs $11 and a second walk across a parking lot. And it means I will never again stand in an aisle with a phone against my shoulder, waiting to find out where I stand. Perla kept the job. She has savings and is working towards something permanent. Inez is at the same school, has friends, and considers long division a personal insult. My mother called on Christmas Eve. She had seen the nonprofit's year-end post, a wreath on the door. She did not ask whether I regretted it or whether the agreement could be changed. She did not call it their house. She said, I hope you're somewhere you feel wanted. A year earlier, she would have asked when I was coming home. 6 words of difference. It felt enormous. I brought my grandmother's buttermilk pie and a store-bought apple pie, one in each hand, in 2 trips. I don't carry that key anymore. The program has it. My coat pocket has been empty a year, and I have finally stopped reaching into it. Inez's paper chain was looped along the porch rail, taped crooked, one end curling loose. In the pantry door frame, 2 pencil marks I have known my whole life, D 1993, D 1996. Underneath, in a different hand, in fresh pencil, I 2026. Nobody pointed at it. Nobody made a ceremony of it. I counted the chairs before I counted anything else. It is the first thing I have done in every room I enter since I was 9, and I have never been able to stop. There was one more than there needed to be. Nobody had decorated it. Nobody made it a lesson about belonging. Somebody had said it the way my grandmother said it for 51 years, for whoever turned up. Last Christmas, I stood in an aisle holding 2 pies for a table that had already counted 7. This year, I walked into a house I did not give away, and somebody had counted one more than they needed. I wasn't needed there. I was wanted. It turns out those have never been the same thing. Vivian Krause set an extra place for 51 years and never explained why. I think I understand it now. So tell me in the comments, have you ever been the one who counts the chairs? The one who arrives early, fixes things, smooths them over, and gets called difficult the first time you stop? I read every one. And if this stayed with you, subscribe. Next week, the woman who learned at her mother's funeral that she had been paying a mortgage on a house she never owned.